Tennessee wife says she's seen her dead husband at Buc-ee's, coming out of Buc-ee's. She said he was limping just like her husband used to. She said he wore his hat, exactly like her husband used to, and like adjusted it and everything. And then she shares that back before he passed away, or supposedly passed away, because apparently they couldn't find him or his body. They just, had a funeral without a body. She said that he went to the Philippines for 2 months with his friends to go do something in the Philippines. She didn't really state what it was. And apparently vanished in the Philippines. And she didn't get into the details about the Filipino, police or anything like that. But she said she is positive this is her husband. Now I'm thinking that he went to the Philippines and maybe found him a little something there. He wanted to stay there. Maybe him and his, his friends, maybe they're on the down low. I don't know. But this woman is convinced. She said she's seen him when he walked out. She's seen him wobble. She said she's seen him get in a truck. She said she's seen him adjust his cap, like he used to adjust his cap when he would get into the vehicle, like when they were getting ready to leave. She said it's him. And she made a police report.
People say bad things happen in threes. No bad things happen to me! Ah! I just need to run you through the last year of my life very, very quickly. And this week has maybe been the worst, okay? So in August, the company that I worked for that I loved so much went into administration, but they were like, it's okay, someone will buy us out, it's fine. Someone did buy us out. Great! And then October rolls around and they say, some of you are not safe. And in the same week, I think it was the day after all 3 of my housemates decided to move out. The same day. Now, do I have shade towards them? No. Actually, no. I do with one of them. We've got fucking beef because I'm currently paying for his council tax. Because he's on the fucking run. But the other 2, no tea, no shade. At this point, I'm possibly jobless and definitely homeless. I move into my mum's Harry Potter cupboard. Bearing in mind I've accumulated 5 years worth of shite at this point. I only lived there for 6 weeks though. Because I stay with the same company but where my mum lives, which is like 3 hours away from where I used to live. And then I get a house and I think, oh my god, things are looking up, this is great. The day after I move in, the fucking shop closes. I'm jobless. I am jobless until February. 4 months! You do not know what I had to do in that time. Anyway, I get a job, and is it the best job ever? No. But is it a job? Yes. Everyone there is nice. It's fine. Next few months were okay. Good. I got my cats. I got a boyfriend. Everything was working out. Or so I fucking thought. It only gets worse. Well, it can't get worse than this. This is the worst part, right? My dad calls me the end of June. He goes, your granddad's dying and your cat got run over. What? Now, I have 2 cats in my house and I have 4 cats back at home, which are like my childhood pets. All 6 of them are my whole world. Like, literally earth-shattering. Like, I had to go to work the next day and I was literally watering the plants, fucking sobbing. And my granddad is my best friend. Yes, my best friend is an 85-year-old man. I don't give a fuck. And then we move on to July this week. Think it can't get worse, but it does! So, it's Thursday today. On Monday night, I play with the cats, I have dinner, I get into bed and I start watching Monster High movies. I watched 4 of them, right? And as I was watching the last one, I think, right, okay, time for sleep. And some fucker tries to break into my house! Ah! So I had to get the neighbours on the case. My boyfriend had to come down in the fucking middle of the night. I was supposed to have a job interview the next day. Did it happen? No, because I was awake until fucking 6 o'clock in the morning. Just vomiting with pure anxiety. And then the last fucking straw. Today I go into work. And I was actually having a good day. I thought, oh, my manager calls me up to the office and I think, oh, fuck, he's caught me on my phone. No, I have 2 weeks to find a new job. And the biggest issue about that is I can't find another job here because I live in the arse end of nowhere and can't drive because I'm fucking disabled. I have cats to feed and also I can't just up and move. I have a boyfriend. I can't just up and move my life. Also the cats. Oh my god. And you know what's been keeping me going this week is I spent so much money last week and the packages just keep arriving. So it's been very exciting. I bought myself a pair of Adidas Campus. I bought 6 Monster High dolls. I bought a dress for a wedding, a handbag. I bought a pair of heels for the wedding. I bought a Ring doorbell because I got broken into. I bought a cat camera because I thought I want to know that they're safe while I'm at work. I wouldn't have done that if I know I was going to be jobless. My life is a fucking shambles.
Tonight's story was submitted by a former overnight security guard who worked at the historic Pine Building in downtown Long Beach, California during renovations in 2018. He gave me permission to share his experience. The Pine Building was built in 1929, and when he worked there, it was undergoing renovations. Most of the building had no electricity. Only the third floor still had power. Night after night, he made his rounds through the dark hallways, often completely alone. At first, it was just a feeling. He described the building as having a different kind of energy. Then he began seeing what he could only describe as shadow figures moving throughout the building. He told me even some of his friends with the Long Beach Police Department didn't like going inside the building because of stories they had heard. Then came the night that stayed with him. Around 3 a.m, after climbing all 13 floors, he stepped outside to enjoy a break. While he was outside, he snapped a photo of the building. At the time, he didn't notice anything unusual. It wasn't until later that he looked back at the picture, noticed what he believed was a figure standing in one of the windows. But according to him, the photo wasn't the experience that unsettled him the most. On another overnight shift, around 1 o'clock in the morning, he was walking through the building alone when he suddenly heard a voice speaking directly into his ear. It simply asked, "What are you doing inside?" He said the building had massive, heavy doors. If someone had entered, he believes he would have heard them. As far as he knew, he was completely alone. After those experiences, something even stranger began to happen. He started having recurring dreams that placed him inside the Pine Building decades earlier. In those dreams, people dressed in clothing from the 1930s walked the halls as though the building had never changed. Looking back now, he told me he still can't believe he ever worked there alone. So, what do you think? Was there something inside the Pine Building that didn't want to be forgotten? If you have a ghost story you'd like me to share, you can submit it through the ghost story submissions form in the link in my bio. Sleep lightly. Some stories don't end when the lights go out.
I'm living in a hotel right now because I'm still working out of town. And I, for the first time 2 nights ago, got really spooked in my hotel room. I was like, I am certainly not alone here. And I was like too scared to I was kind of hot. So I had one leg out and then I was like, that's too dangerous. So I put my leg back in, that kind of situation. And I felt a little spooked last night too. And it reminded me that I don't think I've ever told you guys about my favorite haunting of mine, which was my very first big kid apartment. I was 19 years old. It was in West Hollywood. It's in one of the older buildings. Nothing in West Hollywood was really very old, but it was in the older buildings. And I was falling asleep. It was my first week in the apartment. And I get into bed and I'm all cozy. I turn the light off and the light goes back on. And I was like, okay, weird faulty wiring in this joint. So I get up and the light switch is across the room. So I get up and I go over, I shut the light off. I get back into bed. As soon as I get cozy, the light goes back on. And I just am like, what the fuck ever. I'm just sleeping with the light on. And there's no problem during the day, by the way. Oh my God. It's only when I'm like exactly falling asleep that the light turns on. So then the next night, I'm getting into bed, cozy, turn off the light goes back on just as I'm about to fall back asleep. Do the same dance. It's on all night. I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, the wiring's not right. He's great. I'll come over this weekend and help. My dad's very crafty. He knows stuff. So I'm also like, of course, my dad's going to be my first call for anything I need. That's what dads are for, And so the rest of the week, I just sort of commit to sleeping with the lights on. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. This is so annoying, whatever. But I was so tired and so grumpy on, like, I don't know, the 4 nights in. And I remembered some things someone had told me, which is like, ghosts have to listen to you. So if you're having a problem with a ghost, just talk to it. So I was like, worth a shot. So I said, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but I would love to help you. I don't know how, and I don't know what you need. And I'm really so tired, and I could really use a good night's sleep. Like, will you please just turn the lights off? That light went off and never went back on again. I'm sorry. Fucking terrifying. And anyway, I regret telling you that story because now I feel like I'm going to be even more scared tonight. But you know what? You live, you learn, and I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye now.
Have you ever heard of the book that the Soviets allegedly weren't supposed to keep, but they did? Well, a follower sent me this rabbit hole a few days ago, and I haven't been able to stop reading into it, so I'm going to share it with you. Now, according to the story, in 1946, shortly after the end of World War II, a secret Soviet intelligence team recovered a strange leather-bound book from a heavily damaged German research facility. And there was no title on it, there was no author's name, it was just a symbol burned into the cover that none of their linguists could ever identify. Now, when they finally opened it, every page contained detailed illustrations of beings that looked almost human, but not quite. Some of them were impossibly tall with pale, featureless faces. Others had oversized black eyes, gray skin, or skin that shimmered like fish scales. And every drawing included handwritten notes describing where they supposedly came from and how they communicated, what they wanted from humanity, and whether they should be considered friendly or not. The strangest part is that the final section wasn't about aliens at all. It was actually about us, about humans. And one page reportedly claimed that humans were being quietly observed by multiple civilizations, each with its own agenda. And another allegedly warned that some races preferred to remain hidden because the moment people became aware of their existence, they became aware of you. And the story says that the Soviet scientists dismissed it as fantasy until translators noticed something very disturbing. Mixed among the unknown symbols were bits of German, Russian, and Latin, and languages that wouldn't officially exist for decades after that point. And as the book was studied, the people assigned to it supposedly began reporting identical nightmares. Every night they dreamed of standing in a long hallway lined with doors. Behind each door was one of these beings from the book just waiting for them. And one researcher allegedly wrote in his journal that the creatures never attacked him, they just watched him and observed, and it happened night after night. Then, one morning, he arrived at work carrying a photograph taken in his apartment while he slept. And standing beside his bed was the same tall figure he had been dreaming about. There was no sign of forced entry into his home, no fingerprints, there was nothing. And within weeks, the research team was quietly dissolved and personnel were reassigned without explanation, and every known copy of their reports disappeared into Soviet archives. The original book was never seen again, or at least, that's the story. But here's the detail that keeps resurfacing online. People claim that there was one final page that almost no one talks about, and it didn't contain a drawing, it contained a date, and a date that was still decades in the future. Again, there was no further explanation on this, just a handwritten sentence beneath it stating, when they begin searching for us, we no longer have the ability to hide. Now, whether the so-called Book of Alien Races ever existed is absolutely impossible to verify, and there is no credible historical evidence proving that this story actually happened. But if it was only a hoax, why do so many versions of the story end exactly the same way, with the same warning? Do not read the last page alone. Time and time again, that's the same message. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments if you've heard about this before. This is the first time that I'm hearing about it, so I was pretty excited to get on here and share it with you guys and see what you guys think. So let me know.
So this is kind of a taboo video to make, but I wanted to make this video and be the person who comes on and admits to something because I feel like a lot of people who are also my age don't know this. Last night, around like 12 a.m., my dog got into the garbage and we had to take him to the vet because he was like shaking and really scared when we went like near his face. Like we were like trying to touch his nose to see if he ate something or if he had a cut in his mouth because he was acting weird, and he would like flinch and back up and not look at us, and he was just acting really, really strange. So I flipped out and I was like, I'm taking him to the vet. I have this much in savings. I'm willing to spend like 10 grand. I don't even care. So we sped to the vet, flipping out. Like my dog the entire time is like kind of like really slow heartbeat and like all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like these are his final hours. We have to get to the vet right now. When we got to the vet, one of the first questions she asked us is like, does the dog have any access to gardening stuff? And off the bat, we were like, no, there's stuff, but it's all in jars and there's no like gummies or anything, for lack of a better word, that he could have access to. We keep everything very far away from him. Because from what we understood, you can't eat like flour or ash or ingest it in that way and feel anything from it because it's not processed that way. So then after like 30 minutes of pure sobbing, the vet comes in really relaxed and he's like, so I just want to check in about like how he was doing. Tell me about this guy, like our dog. So I'm flipping out. I'm like, he flinches when you get near him. He's shaking. He's like easily startled, and he's not breathing super like heavily. His breaths are shallow. His heartbeat is slow. I'm like saying everything possible, flipping out. The vet is just looking at me like, and I forget what he called it, but I'm really, really drilling in this like flinching when we get near his face because I'm convinced that he like ate tinfoil or ate like some sort of garbage or something's like in his throat, and I'm like terrified. And he's like, so what that is a neurological symptom called, I don't know, it sounded like hyperdysplasia, dyslexia, hyperbole, I don't know, something like that, where even if I was going like this really far away from you, it looks like this. So it's really intense for him when you're in his face like that because of this neurological disorder. And I'm like, you're telling me my dog has a neurological disorder? Like, what's going on? So I was like, no, it just started like after he got into the garbage. Like, I promise you, it's like, it just started. He hasn't had this. And the guy's like, I understand that. It's just a neurological symptom that usually tends to happen in dogs, taking forever to explain it when there is some sort of toxin, intoxication. So I look at him after he spends forever trying to explain this to me. I'm like, so he's like, and he's like, yeah. And then he goes on to tell me that it's totally fine. His body's just really, really relaxed. And I was like, how did he do that? And he's like, the ash, roaches, stuff like that. I was like, oh, so ash can do this. I had no idea. Immediately, I'm like, is it really bad? Like, is he okay? Does he need anything? Like, is he like freaking out? Is he like sick? Like, what's going on? And he was like, no, his body's just very relaxed. He barely had any. He's totally fine. He's just going to be like this for a little while. He can sleep it off. We can he said that they could like inject like a fatty substance into him and that it would help it wear off faster. But I was like, no, like, it's okay. Because I made sure that he wasn't in pain or like super messed up or anything. And it was like, he's fine. But I wanted to make this video because we literally had no idea that was even possible. We had no idea that was even a possibility. It's a very vulnerable thing to come on to social media as a pet owner and talk about something like this happening. But I'm a young adult owning my first dog, and I feel like it's very, very important that you guys know too that can happen. Because yeah, we keep everything away from him. We had no idea that a little bit of ash in a trash bag on the floor could have done that. We had no clue because we didn't understand that dogs process that differently than humans do. He's fine now, very, very relaxed, very sleepy. He's sleeping it off. I've been snuggling him all day, but I really wanted to make this video. If you own a pet, if you are a gardener, right? Like if you have experience with this, just take this video into account. I really want to spread this information now that I know it personally. It cost me $200, okay, just for them to tell me. So make sure you keep all of your trash away from the reach of your pets, all of your trays, right? Anything that contains ash or roaches or anything like that cannot be anywhere near them because that does do something. And if he had ingested more, it would have done something worse. It is possible for them to like have seizures and stuff like that. So be really, really careful with your pets and know this, learn from my mistakes.
Don't go in the woods alone. Something was off before I even stepped into the woods. I was in the middle of nowhere and I stopped at this little gas station, the kind that you never see in the city where they let you pump the gas before you even pay. I grabbed snacks, filled my tank with gas, and I told the guy behind the counter that I was going to be camping for a few days. Just me, solo. Trying to be friendly, I said, "Don't worry, I'm just passing through. I like camping alone." He didn't laugh, he didn't even blink, he just handed me my change and he said, "If you hear whistling, don't follow it, and if the woods talk, don't talk back." I'm thinking this guy's just trying to mess with me because, you know, it's the Appalachian Mountains. Everyone's heard the stories, you know, about the elementals, skinwalkers, the mountain people, all that. But everyone knows it's just stories. I figured he was just trying to scare me because I'm a girl alone in the woods. But I wasn't here for the folklore. I was here because I just wanted to spend some time in nature alone. The trailhead was empty. No cars, no footprints, no noise. Just me, by myself. Exactly what I wanted. I hiked 6 miles in, whistling to myself along the way. A little 3-note tune I've done since I was a kid. A sound to fill the silence when I'm alone. By late afternoon, I found the perfect little clearing near a stream, so I decided to make camp there. I set up my tent, filtered some water, and made a fire. It was peaceful. I mean, there were no distractions, no people, no phone service, just me and nature. That was until I went to sleep, because I woke up around 2 a.m. with this weird feeling. You know, when you wake up and you almost feel like you're not alone? It's like your body is starting to panic and you don't even know why yet. I could hear from outside my tent whistling. My whistling. Those 3 little notes that I was whistling earlier. Something was in the woods, whistling them back at me. And then I heard footsteps outside. I whispered, "Hello? Hello?" The footsteps stopped. I lifted up the flap and peeked out the window in my tent. And staring back at me from the dark woods were 2 eyes. They were only there a second, and then they disappeared. If you're enjoying the story, follow along and go to part 2.
Y'all, this isn't one of my scary stories. This is probably one of the most personal stories that I've ever told on this page. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why I believe our elders know more than they used to tell us. And hey, Toxins, welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee. And not everything that I serve is going to be safe. So, my great-grandmother was born May 10th, 1904. She was a light-skinned Afro-Latino woman from the Arawak indigenous roots from the Caribbean. She lived through segregation. She lived through unimaginable losses. She lived through things in history books that they barely touch. She carried traditions that were passed down long before she was ever born. Whether people believe that it's spirituality or the old ways or simply family knowledge, she lived by them every single day. She had one eye, y'all, and that's because another woman attacked her over the man that she loved. She later had 5 children with that same white man because those children could pass as white. Their lives looked very different than hers. But she carried every scar, y'all, with dignity. And she never became bitter. She became the protector of our family. And until the day she passed away, she protected me. When I was little, she didn't watch me like an adult usually watch children. She steadied me. Sometimes I'll be sitting outside talking to the trees. Sometimes I'll be staring into the woods for no reason. And sometimes I'll tell people things and they later happened exactly the way that I said it would. I thought everybody experienced life like that, but she knew different. One afternoon, she looked at me for the longest time and then she smiled. And I remember her saying, "You remind me of a woman I knew when I was a little girl." I asked her, "Who?" She smiled, and it was like the biggest smile that I can remember. And then she said, "People called her a witch." Now, before y'all start that word and think Hollywood, understand something. In Haiti, throughout parts of the Caribbean, the word didn't always mean something evil. Sometimes it was the woman who knew the herbs. It was the healers, the midwives, the woman family secretly went to when the medicine couldn't help. The woman who understood dreams and nature and intuition and things that people couldn't explain. Then she looked at me dead in my eyes, y'all, and she said something that completely confused me. She said, "You're on another life cycle." She believed that I had come back carrying many of those same gifts as that woman. She said there were things that I did. The way that I observed people, the way that I noticed things and asked questions that reminded her of that lady. And at that time, I had no idea what she meant. I was just a little girl, y'all. And one of the lessons I remember that my great-grandmother telling me was before she passed away, and this one has stayed with me my entire life. She used to tell me, "Baby, your gifts were never meant to impress people. They were meant to free them. And whatever you do, don't ever become trapped by the very thing God and our ancestors placed inside you." Now, at 9 years old, I didn't understand any of those words. And honestly, I thought she was just talking out the side of her neck, y'all. It wasn't until I became an adult Well, not really an adult. It wasn't until I became a teenager and started recognizing things about myself, and those words finally made sense, because gifts can come before prisons. Gifts can be prisons too. And if you start using them for attention instead of purpose, they can become burdens. And if you spend your life trying to prove yourself to people, guess what? They can consume you. And if your identity becomes the gifts instead of the person carrying it, disaster. The older I get, the more I realize that she wasn't trying to predict my future. She was preparing me for it. And I think those 2 Raggedy Ann dolls that she gave me to protect me was part of it. My great-grandmother passed away when I was only 9 years old. But before she passed, she also gave me those Raggedy Ann dolls. She made me keep these dolls. My original Raggedy Ann doll mysteriously disappeared when I was 7. Nobody knows what happened to that doll. We searched everywhere and it was simply gone. And 2 years later, she handed me these dolls and looked me in my eyes and simply said, keep these close. No explanation, no long conversations, just keep them close. I've done exactly that for more than 30 years. But there's another memory that never left me. And I wish I had this fucking pot, because I threw it away and I didn't know the worth of it. She had this massive iron pot sitting outside in the backyard, a colander. And when I say massive, I mean fucking massive. As a little girl, I thought she was making soup, y'all. She would fill these things up with herbs, roots, flowers, different plants, water, and she'll start slowly stirring it and whispering words that I couldn't even understand. Sometimes she'll stop stirring and she would close her eyes and continue speaking over the pot. As a child, I never questioned it. I just thought that my grandmother was cooking, y'all. And that she was. And years later, I realized it wasn't always soup. She was carrying traditions that had survived generations. Traditions older than slavery, y'all. Older than borders. Older than any of us. And as I got older, I started studying Haiti, its history, its spirituality, its resilience. And I started learning about our African ancestors, about the Arawak and the Thea. No, people who were already in the Caribbean before the colonization. I started studying these people. I started studying about how traditions blended together over centuries. Suddenly, the stories that my great-grandmother told me didn't sound strange anymore. They sounded familiar, like pieces of my own history. So, do I know exactly what she meant when she said, you've been here before? Yes, I do now. I really do. She really believed that my soul had returned. She saw something in me that reminded her of someone that she once knew. She recognized my gifts before I even knew I had them. I just thought I was different. I know this. Every time I trust my intuition, I hear her voice. Every time I encourage someone, I hear her voice. And every time I choose compassion over ego, I hear her voice. Because now I finally understand the greatest gift that she's ever given me wasn't those dolls. It wasn't the stories. And it wasn't even the traditions, y'all. You know what it was? It was teaching me that gifts are responsibilities. They're not trophies. They're not entertainment. And they're not meant to make people think that you're special. They're meant to leave people freer than they were before they met you. And maybe that's what she meant all along. Yeah. So now I want to ask y'all something. Have y'all had an elder in your family ever say something about you that you didn't understand, that it just didn't make sense to you until years later? Because the older I get, the more I realize my great-grandmother wasn't raising me. She was preparing me. I served it black for y'all today. I got to get in here and do some work. Drink from a clean source. And remember, 2026 mindset, lock them gates. I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next video.
Welcome to the Midnight Sesh. I wish you could smell this right now. That's where I can leave it at. Let's get into the story. I'm a skeptic at heart, but some of my in-laws have what they describe as a gift for seeing ghosts. It's not something they flaunt or dramatize. It's more like a hereditary quirk that occasionally reveals itself, and they actually dislike talking about it. My natural inclination is to look for logical explanations, especially when it's just one person claiming to experience something. But when 2 people see the same thing, that's harder to dismiss. My sister-in-law has this gift. As do a few of her kiddos, they avoid discussing it unless absolutely necessary. And when they do, it's with reluctance. The reactions always seem genuine, like this is an unwanted burden rather than a talent. One day, my sister-in-law and her family visited the cemetery to pay respects to their great-grandfather. On their way out, they noticed another funeral taking place for someone else. That's when things got strange. As they were driving away, my sister-in-law and her 14-year-old son noticed a young girl standing around 40 feet from their car. The girl was wearing a white dress and had long hair. At first, my sister-in-law and nephew started asking each other who was the lone girl. and why she was so far away from everyone else. Both of them confirmed they saw her clearly, but when they pointed her out to 3 others in the car, no one else could see her at all. Confused, they stopped the car, trying to figure out what was going on. My sister-in-law and her son became more insistent, practically going nuts, trying to explain and pointing. She's right there, look. Left of the tree, white dress, black hair, just standing there. The girl didn't look like a stereotypical ghost. No see-through appearance or glowing aura. She looked solid like a regular person, but something about her felt off. The more they described her, the eerier it became. The girl appeared to be around 11 or 12 and seemed oblivious to the world around her. Despite the strange situation, my sister and nephew were adamant that what they saw wasn't a figment of their imaginations. They described the exact same thing independently of each other, without an opportunity to coordinate or fabricate the story. I wouldn't normally give much weight to something like this, but their descriptions match perfectly, and their reactions were far too intense. They were genuinely shaken and baffled that no one else could see the girl. Even as a skeptic, I can't quite explain this one away, and that frightens me. Thank God I don't have psychic abilities. I got Scorpio intuition though, so don't lie to me. Do you believe in these psychic abilities? I definitely think some people are born with, what's the word I'm looking for? Spidey senses for this shit. But let me know your thoughts down below. Go ahead and like, follow, comment, and share. I love you as always. Bye.
Have you ever wondered why we call it a wake in association with funerals? Well, I work full-time as a funeral director and often take people back to a wake after a funeral has taken place, traditionally cremations these days. However, a wake in history always happened prior to usually a burial. Now, the idea was family, friends, neighbours, etc. would all gather round at a recently deceased's house and spend time with the body, usually overnight, to ensure that person truly was dead. It was a common belief that you could be buried alive, especially during the Victorian period. So by spending a night with the deceased, you could ensure they did not wake. This is where the name originates from. And equally, it has origins within religion, paganism, Christianity, Catholicism. It goes back to predate even some types of religion. And the idea of this was believed that a recently deceased body could be overtaken by evil spirits. It could come back from the grave as a type of bloodsucker, a reverent. So people wanted to ensure their loved one was safe. It was also crucial that if they were a Catholic, Christian, etc., the body was blessed. And this also happens as last rite. Prior to death, a priest comes to see somebody who's at the end of their life and absolves them of their sins, which equally decreases the chances of that blessed holy body can be taken over by something evil when it's not long passed away. It was also common practice in the house to cover mirrors because they were portals to the other side, and you must never let the deceased's reflection be cast in the mirror because something else could see this and take over the body. Similar, people didn't like windows being open or being able to see into them when a body was resting in the house. Spirits that were dwelling the streets, wishing to steal a recently deceased body to come back through, could get the idea if they seen it resting within your living room, so equally curtains were drawn, etc. Now, there is a lot more in-depth information about this, but ultimately that is where the name originates. We didn't want a body to be buried alive and therefore had to check it did not wake up. And that's where the name originates. As we said at the start of the video, it's now commonplace to refer to this as a gathering with family and friends. However, we do still have, in the case of Catholic families and in, around the world, that people gather for the wake prior to the funeral. It's still quite commonplace in Ireland and some particularly religious Scottish and English families, in which, again, the deceased will rest at home, usually in the lounge, or within the church the night before the funeral's due to take place. And again, this is to ensure they are sleeping soundly within holy surroundings and that the deceased is protected in the right way.
Welcome everyone to Scary Stories for the Soul. My name is Ashley, and I will be telling you true, scary stories from someone else's encounters. So, grab a snack, get something to drink, get comfortable, and let's get started. Since it is a Friday night and majority of people are up late, I decided I'm going to do a long video tonight. So we'll probably do at least 2 to 3 stories tonight. So get comfortable, and I hope you guys enjoy. The first story is called Ambushed. When I was around the age of 15, a bunch of my friends were sleeping over at my house for the night. One of my friends, Brooke, was curious about what might happen if we messed with a Ouija board. Some of the others seemed reluctant about the idea, but since I knew we had one down in the basement, I decided to bring it up. I never really believed in that sort of thing, so I figured it would be a bit of fun. We read and followed all the instructions, but something must have gone wrong, because weird things started to happen. The board started shaking suddenly, freaking us all out. As we got up and ran, the board flew up into the air and almost knocked me out. Then the chaos ensued. Glasses went flying off the shelves, dishes smashed on the floor, tables and chairs were dragged across the room and flipped over. We were all terrified, and since we were home alone that night, nobody else heard the commotion. After about 20 minutes, everything stopped and went quiet. The rest of the night went on as normal too, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened that night. We'd messed with something we shouldn't have, and we released something that never should have been released. A demon. It was about 2 years after that when the demon attacked again. I was lying in bed one night with my bedroom door wide open when suddenly the door slammed shut. There were no windows open, no breeze, so I thought it was a little odd. But when I got up and checked out in the hallway, there was nobody there. So I shut the door again and went back to bed. A year after that, I moved out of the house, but I wasn't alone. I think the demon we released that night 3 years ago followed me. While I was still unpacking, some of the boxes tipped over by themselves. When I was nowhere near them, doors throughout the house kept opening and slamming shut without cause. And I was repeatedly hearing footsteps thudding upstairs. Even when there was nobody there, I tried to ignore it, and after a short while, it went away. The last straw was when it began to terrorize my 4-year-old. This happened only a few weeks ago, when my little boy asked me about the glowing red eyes watching him while he slept. Hearing him say that chilled my blood. A few nights later, I woke up to him screaming in the middle of the night. I ran to his room to find him sitting up in bed, shaking all over. He kept pointing to the corner of the room and saying, "That thing is scaring me." After that, I visited a priest and explained what was happening. He blessed the house with holy water, focusing on mine and my child's room, and read out verses from the Bible. The cleansing seemed to do the trick, as the demon went away and hasn't shown itself again. But I'm terrified that one day it will return. I pray every night that it will never come back. The Ouija board is not something to mess with. No way. There's absolutely no way I would ever do that. Okay, so tonight's second story is called Murmurs. It must have been the middle of the night, around 3 or 4 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of voices. I'd gone to sleep fairly early since I was extremely tired from the day before and had been sleeping quite heavily. I knew because when I woke up, my head felt fuzzy and my eyes were thick with sleep in the way that they got when I had been in a deep sleep. The room seemed quiet at first. Not even the dogs were making a sound. And then I heard it. A girl's voice, speaking close to the bed. Through blurred eyes, I looked around the room. There was nobody there. I found it extremely odd at the time and had never heard anything like it before. I couldn't make out what she was saying exactly, as it was a little more than a whisper. But I was convinced there were speaking from inside the room. None of the windows were open, so it couldn't have been someone talking out on the street. The whispering only lasted a minute or so, before everything went quiet again. I remember lying awake for a short while, trying to figure out what exactly I had heard, until I eventually fell back asleep again. It didn't scare me in any way. The voice was a child's, and in a way it seemed innocent, if anything. I was just confused. The following morning, as I was getting ready for work, I remembered the voice I had heard and asked my fiancé if he had been talking to himself in the night. He said he didn't recall, but I doubted it had been him anyways, as the voice I'd heard distinctly belonged to a little girl. I'm not sure what more I could do to find out who this girl is. Even though I didn't physically see anything that night, I'm sure what I heard was real. I was convinced there was a girl in the room with us, and she'd been trying to tell me something. I've never experienced anything like that before, but I don't remember being scared about it. The voice sounded so calm and innocent. I was sure the speaker meant no harm or anything like that. I hope the little girl comes back, if only so I can confirm what I heard and maybe make out exactly what she was trying to tell me. I don't know. For me, the children ghosts, like the child ghosts, are so scary. Honestly, I think because usually it's like something older and more ancient, like pretending to be a child. That does happen quite a bit usually. When you hear of like hauntings with like children, it's pretty crazy. Okay. The next one is called Silhouette. When I was younger, I used to tell my friends about the dark figure I'd see in my room at night. Back when I was really little, at the time, they probably thought I was making it up or had imagined it, but I wasn't. I really did a shadowy figure in my room when I was small. The figure never hurt me, and most of the time he just stood there at the end of my bed. Even though I couldn't see him properly, I assumed he was a man because he was broad-shouldered and tall, and struck quite an imposing figure. He must have been at least 6'3", but he seemed to slouch a lot. He didn't have a face. He was more like a silhouette or a thick shadow that could move, and he had wings. Although they were usually folded up on his back, for the longest time I thought he had simply been a dream or a figment of a child's imagination. But he wasn't. I really did see him. About 2 years ago, I was talking to my mom about a friend of hers who we used to live with. His name was Austin, and we lived with him for about 3 months around that time. He got sick with cancer and died shortly after. My mom told me that one day while we were living with him, she'd come home from work to find Austin sitting at the kitchen table crying. When she asked him what was wrong, he said that I had come into his room and told him about a man with black wings who would stand in my room. At that time, I was only 4 or 5 years old, and Austin was terrified for me to have witnessed something that at such a young age. After she found out, my mom had taken me straight to the church and told our pastor about it. He explained to her that the figure I had seen was a dark angel, or the angel of death. The reason he didn't hurt me was because I was a child, an innocent soul, and it wasn't my time. A month or so after, we saw the pastor and told him what had happened. He died, and shortly after that, Austin died too. The dark angel I had seen was a sign that death was coming, and so it did. That one's scary. I always wonder about stuff like that. Like, I always wonder, like, when you are dying, if you don't die suddenly, like, if you see those types of things as you're dying, like at end-of-life experiences, I guess. Just pretty scary. Okay. The next one. Let me go back a little bit. We're going to do one more just because, you know, I just feel like doing it. So, the last one we'll do tonight is called One Man's End, Another Demon's Beginning. My life was perfectly normal until the day my friend committed suicide. There was something weird about that day, about me. It's difficult to explain it clearly, but I felt like something came home with me after the horrible events that happened. The closest thing I can describe it, that I began to see what I perceived to be a demon. On multiple occasions, it started out as nothing but simple manifestations of a humanoid creature. Most of the time, it would be a shadow in the corner of my eye that disappeared as soon as I looked at it. But sometimes I would swear I saw a face watching me from the corner of the room or in a reflection. I never really saw anything though, not until things started to get worse. I'd been home alone watching TV when the screen suddenly went to static. And for a moment, I thought I'd seen a silhouette of someone standing behind me in the reflection. I jumped to my feet, turning around, and was sure I saw someone there. Then it began to speak to me. It said things like, "Now you really know pain," and started asking me to join it. I didn't know what it meant or what it wanted, and I was starting to freak out. But then I began to entertain the possibility that it could have been my friend, the one who had committed suicide. On the day this strange phenomenon started, at first I tried to ignore it, doing everything I could to distract myself from its voice. Until one day I mustered up the courage to answer it back. The next time it appeared, I said in a calm voice as I could manage, "I'm not afraid of you. Are you Jake?" I remember my heart thudding nervously as I waited for it to reply, to tell me whether or not it was my deceased friend. But what happened next terrified me. The entity had become more material at this point. Not just a shadow out of the corner of my eye anymore, but a physical being. It looked at me with hollow black eyes and said in a mocking voice, "Jake, who is that?" "I am not that. I am you, and you are me." I didn't understand what it was trying to tell me at the time, but things started to change again after that. The demonic entity stopped bothering me for a while after, and I didn't see or hear it again, but I started to feel strange. Like I wasn't really myself anymore. I used to be a calm, patient person, but I began to feel angry and agitated over the smallest things, and my temper would flare up out of nowhere. I remember once fighting against the urge to hurt one of my best friends, just because they were annoying me a little bit. It was almost like I wasn't even me anymore. And that's when the demon's words started to make sense. When it had said, "I am you, and you are me," could it have meant that the demon wanted to possess me? That it wanted to be a part of me and share the same body? Or was it already too late? That one's a little freaky. Definitely a possession. That's so scary. Possessions and like mimics and things along those lines are probably the things that I fear the most in the paranormal world. I think growing up in the 80s and the 90s and you watch the movie The Exorcist quite a bit, yeah, no way. Alright guys, well let's go ahead and do one more, I guess, since the last ones have been kind of short. We'll go ahead and do another one. But we will make this the last one, as this video is already about to be 16 minutes long. So it is a Friday night though. Everyone's awake, I'm guessing, or maybe not. I mean, some people I guess prefer to be out on a Friday night, but not me. I guess I like to stay in and read scary stories. I did order though some more like true paranormal encounters, like some different books that I can read to you guys until I can get other people to start sending me their scary stories. Okay, let's see which one we're gonna do. This one is called Skeptics. Okay, Skeptics. In the summer of 2002, my boyfriend and I decided to move in together as a way to become more independent of our parents. This move coincided perfectly with my boyfriend accepting a new job on the edge of town working security for a small manufacturing company. We scored the area for a small home with inexpensive rent and found a quiet little house a few blocks from my boyfriend's new employer. We paid the security deposit, and within a week we were unpacking boxes in our new home with views of the mountains from our backyard. My boyfriend's job required him to work 12-hour shifts at night, so I was left alone most of the time. While this area of town was not known to be dangerous or rough, I could not help but feel slightly unsettled in the quiet of our house at night. A few weeks after moving in, while my boyfriend was at work one night, I started to hear the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps throughout the house. Knowing I was alone in the house, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and went room to room, checking for anyone or anything that could have made those sounds. As I was moving from the bedroom into the hallway towards the living room, I began hearing loud banging, not unlike the metallic clanging of a hammer on a rock. These sounds went on for several nights, and I did my best to convince my husband of what was going on. However, he dismissed the sound as simply the house making noise as it settled from the day. Neither one of us believed in the paranormal and were highly skeptical of things like ghosts. However, I knew what I had experienced, and it was not the normal sounds of a settling house. I was starting to believe that our house was possibly haunted. I was soon fully convinced when a series of events occurred that chilled me to my very core. One weekend, when my boyfriend was off from his job, we settled in for bed. As usual, we heard the footsteps and the banging, and my boyfriend was still as dismissive as ever of the sounds as normal. I tried to go to sleep, but even though I was tired, I could not rest. I tossed and turned for what felt like hours until I opened my eyes to check the time. The alarm clock showed it had only been a couple of hours and my boyfriend was in a deep sleep. I looked around the room, and in the moonlight, I could see someone standing at the foot of our bed. I was immediately struck, motionless in fear. Had someone broken into our house? Was he waiting for me to scream so that he could kill us as we slept? I wiped my eyes, trying to make sure I saw as much detail about the person as I could for when I called the police. That was when I noticed that the figure staring at me from the end of the bed was an older man, possibly in his 60s. He wore an old button-down gray shirt and denim overalls. His clothes appeared to be in tatters and were covered in dirt. After staring at me for a few minutes, he turned towards the bedroom door and began walking away from us. It was then that I noticed that this man could not have possibly been alive. The back of the old man's head looked as though it had been beaten in with something. It was sunken in, and his hair was matted to the back of his skull, thick with blood. I finally came to my senses and screamed, waking my boyfriend from his slumber. I was frightened horribly to the point of crying hysterically. He grabbed a baseball bat and quickly went room to room, looking for any signs of an intruder. To my horror, he found no one and questioned what I saw as a dream or a hallucination caused by the moonlight playing in the room. When he questioned me, patronizing my fear and pain, I knew I had to get out of this house. We argued for hours, and I ultimately packed an overnight bag with clothes to go stay at my parents' house. Since he had not seen anything and did not believe what I was telling him, he stayed behind and went off to work. I explained to my parents the unnerving noises I had heard and the old man in our room and how he vanished. My dad told me that even though he did not know much about our house, he did know the area where it was built fairly well. Back in the 1800s, there were several mining camps located there, as the mountains nearby had been sources of both gold and copper. It was fairly common in those days for miners to lay claim to the land, and even more common for them to fight over those lots. There had been numerous reports that back in those days that several miners wound up dead, attacked in their sleep by greedy competitors looking to find a big payload in their mines. Upon hearing this, I put all the clues together. The sounds of metallic banging were a miner's hammer or pickaxe hitting stone. The old man I had seen must have been one of those dead miners killed by one of his rivals. I called up my boyfriend to let him know what I had learned of the home's potential past and the history of the area. He shockingly agreed with me. Taken aback by his sudden change of heart, I asked him why he decided that I was right. He told me that, as much as he hated to admit it, our house was haunted. The bloody old man that had frightened me so horrifically that night had finally appeared to him. We decided to call a local church and ask if the priest could come to our home and do a series of cleansing of the house and the land to rid us of the ghostly activities. Since those cleansings, everything has become peaceful again, for now. Yeah, no, sometimes I think like when the land is haunted, it doesn't matter what you put there or what you build. You can tear the house down and rebuild it. If the land's haunted, more than likely everything on that land is going to be haunted too, which is pretty scary. Okay guys, we're at like 25 minutes. Should we do one more? No, I think we'll wait until tomorrow. Alright guys, well, thank you for watching. Please, if you could, share this video, give me a like, give me a follow, send me some stars if you enjoy it. I want to keep doing these for you guys, but I'm really trying to build my following so I can, you know, build a better, like, fan base, I guess, of more like-minded people who enjoy the same thing I enjoy, I guess. So if you could please share this video, get the word out there. If you're not following me, please do. And I need people to start sending me stars, guys. So I do appreciate everyone who watches, though, and I plan on doing these as many nights a week as I possibly can. So for now, and until the next one, I will talk to you guys later. Good luck sleeping tonight.
Have you ever had a childhood hallucination? Now, there are people who've came forward, said when they were young, when they were children, they used to have these vivid hallucinations where they would see things like animals or people in their room late at night. Now, there was this man named Michael. Michael said when he was younger, he grew up in this normal neighborhood, in this pretty normal house. And he said he remembered being about 8 or 9 years old. And one night he was in bed. And he said in his bedroom, his bed was by a window. And he said on the other side of the room was his sister's bed. Well, sometime in the middle of the night, he said he was awoken to the sound of dogs sort of panting and crying. He said it sounded like a bunch of puppies. And it sounded like it was coming from underneath his bed. So he said he got up, he got out of bed, and he looks. And sure enough, underneath his bed, there were 4 puppies. And he said they started to run up to him, and they were licking him, and it felt so real. So he goes and he wakes up his sister, and he says, look, there's these dogs. Like, Mom and Dad must have gotten us puppies. And the sister gets up, and she plays with these dogs. Well, after 25, 30 minutes, he said one of the dogs that was on his lap bites him. And he said it started to bite at his arm, and it started to hurt really, really bad. And he takes the dog and kind of pushes him off. But as he turns and he looks down at the dog, he said he could see it had these bright red eyes. And it didn't look like that same cute puppy that he was originally playing with. It seemed like some sort of evil, monstrous creature. So he screams and yells for his parents. His parents come in the bedroom, and he says, Mom, Dad, like, I don't like those dogs that you brought here, those puppies. And his mom and dad are like, what are you talking about? Like, we didn't get any puppies. And he said, no, they were under the bed. And his sister's like, yeah, we were playing with them. So the dad searches the entire house, thinking maybe some kind of dogs might have gotten in. He doesn't find anything, except there are these tiny little scratches underneath Michael's bed. So not too long after this, Michael said one night he woke up in the middle of the night and he needed to drink water. So he got out of bed and he said he walked down the hallway, and he said he went into the living room, and as he looked over, he said he seen the couch cushions kind of shaking, kind of moving. So he walked up to the couch and he said he picked up the cushion, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, of spiders crawling underneath these cushions in the couch. And he said they all just started to come off the bed and make his way towards Michael. So Michael started screaming again, and he said his dad ran out. But when his dad got there, these spiders were gone. There wasn't even a single one left. And so once again, his dad said, I don't think there's any spiders in the house. Like, you must have been dreaming. So he said not too long after that, once again, he's in his bed sleeping. And he said he remembered his sister waking him up. And she said, Michael, like, look at the closet. She says, as they looked at the closet, there were all these crabs, red crabs. They were coming out of the closet door, walking all around the floor. And he said, once again, they yell for their parents, and their parents come in the bedroom. And now these crabs were gone. And he said, at that moment, he was ready to think that it was just a dream. Except he said out of the corner of his eye when his dad was talking to him, he seen one of these crabs walk by his father's lake. And said after he grew up and turned, about 15, 16, he stopped having these hallucinations. But he said for some reason when he was a child, he would see these things that weren't there. So have you ever had an experience where you've seen something when you were a child that wasn't real?
I know for sure that I'm not the only one who's going through that right now. Like seeing things, seeing shadows like in the corner of your eyes. Especially when you're in a room by yourself. You anywhere by yourself. And it's not just that, even voices too. Like you hearing voices, that are people who are actually not there. People who've been long gone, but then you are hearing their voices, calling your name, calling you your nickname, they sound so familiar and so friendly that you recognize who they are. So I had that experience about like a couple days ago before I actually went on TikTok and start scrolling up and down to see if I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just crazy. But no, a lot of people are experiencing the same thing. So a couple of nights ago, I came out here and I'm sitting in the same spot where I'm sitting right now. And then on this side, there's a little tree right here. And this is where like my dogs likes to go and sniff around and do her business. And while I'm sitting here, I can sense there's someone stalking me or being in my presence right there. So I quickly turn, and for a very good 5 seconds, guys, what I saw was a shadow. But I recognized this shadow, like I'm talking about, like I was actually looking at myself. That's what it looks like. It looks like I was looking at myself, me, standing there. And I didn't see anything, obviously. I couldn't see a damn thing. I'm talking about shaking, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. And it just hit me suddenly of like this memory of me standing over there in that corner. I remember that night when I actually just had a lot to drink. And that was when I was going through, with my drinking problem. And I remember I came in that corner that night and I'm standing there and just reflecting on life and how difficult life is and what do I need to do, and I'm not taking my health seriously. I'm drinking every single night. And then I snapped out of it. And I went back inside. My wife questioned me as to why I was out there for so long. But I didn't say anything. I just went to sleep, call it a night, and I woke up the next day. And I'm like, let me go through TikTok to see if this is a thing. Like, why are people, why are we seeing like shadows in the corner of our eyes? And yes, too many people, way too many people. And I know there's a lot more crazy things going on right now that like we don't have answers to, and that's one of them. And then I'm starting to think about theories like, how could it be? And call me crazy all you want, but I have a feeling that like Earth is taking a turn, a U-turn, if I want to be more specific. Yeah, and I'm not the only one. My wife came forward. I don't know how many times that she would call me. She's like, are you outside? I'm like, yes. And she's like, oh, I just saw someone who just walked down the hallway. Or I just heard you call me. And then she's the only one in the house. My mom has told me many times that she sensed that. She's seen things in the corner of her eyes, and then when she turned, like it would just be a shadow and then just disappeared automatically. So whatever that's going on, like I said, I have a feeling, you can call me crazy all you want. It has to do with the fact that, our living planet, Mother Earth, is recycling. She's changing. And then we are actually seeing, like different. It's kind of like when you make a U-turn with a vehicle. You make that U-turn, you're going backwards, right, on a different route, and then you're looking at everything that was behind you as you were on the other side of the road. You get what I'm saying? Man, this whole like spiritual journey is so beautiful. Also, it scares the heck out of me, and it's very intriguing. I always want to know more, and thank God for TikTok.
Welcome to Scary Stories for the Soul. My name is Ashley, and I will be telling you scary stories from someone else's experiences. So, grab a snack, get something to drink, get comfortable, and let's get started. Tonight's first story is called Closet Terrors. I haven't felt safe since I was 11. That was when the sounds started. It began in my room, then bled out all throughout my childhood home, and no one else would notice, so they'd laugh it off when I'd mention it. My room would feel like it was in a different world than the rest of the house. Whenever I entered it, the distant feeling that I could not leave it easily would seep into my bones. Noises would emit from corners and echo all around me. At first, I dismissed it as my overactive imagination until it followed me out. I would look over my shoulder, expecting to find someone or something looking back at me. Any room I entered would darken, and noises, mostly scratching and scraping, would emit from the hallway down to the kitchen. The pantry door would fly open and cans would fall to the ground. Every time I would flinch and shudder. I began calling my bedroom the isolation room. It felt like a joke, a way to lighten my mood and lower the room's effect on me. Acknowledging it, but not letting it control my life. It worked until I turned 15. One night, my bedroom door creaked open. I watched, hiding under my covers as a dark shadow floated in. I shivered with a feeling of dread as it settled in my closet. The folding doors could not be opened by a draft. They had never opened on their own before, but every night after that, they would open, sometime during the night. I would either startle awake from the slam or find them open in the morning, and I knew I had shut them. The shadow would still be in there, watching me. Since my bed faced my closet, I couldn't escape it, but I also didn't want to turn my back on it. Then the dreams began. It didn't matter what I dreamed about, it would eventually turn into a nightmare. Something would wrap around my ankle, then sneak around my calf and drag me into the darkness, shutting my mouth and preventing me from moving. I'd wake up covered in sweat, and my eyes would fall on the open closet door. The shadow eventually morphed into a hellish creature lurking in the dark. When I was older, I'd escape by putting on headphones and cranking up the music. If I didn't see it, it would leave, so I thought. I'd long ago stopped trying to make my family take me seriously. Just as I would be comfortable enough to forget why I didn't feel safe, my light would shut off and the music would skip like an old record. I'd try the light switch or find I could press it back on, or my light bulb would blow, once even showering my entire room in glass. I'd fiddle with the switch and the light, all the while feeling like someone was watching me. I could feel eyes peering at the back of my head and feel the shift of the mattress as if someone sat or knelt at the end of my bed. I'd see it clearly in my head. The too wide of a smile with sharp teeth following me even if I closed my eyes. Bile would rise in my throat and I would leave the room, all the while aware that I hadn't really avoided it. When I turned 18, I moved into my boyfriend's house, leaving all of the furniture behind at my parents' place. The house was old and way too far from both of my workplaces and my classes, but I didn't care. I felt free for the first time in years. In those first few months, I finally remembered what it was like to finally feel safe, but his closet was the same as my old one. One night I lie there, unable to fall asleep. It was close to 4 a.m. and I knew my boyfriend was probably on his way home from work. I just began to think about maybe getting up and making him food or doing something, when the closet doors slammed open. I lurched up, old instincts taking over. I could see nothing, but I could hear. "Do you believe in the devil?" The voice was raspy, as if from disuse. I kept quiet. "You should." All of the lights came on. At the end of my bed stood the hellish figure with a sickening smile, hunched over, horned and bleeding. I screamed.
So listen to me.
And shut my eyes. As I kept screaming, I could feel it creeping closer, but I couldn't move to get up and run away. I only stopped screaming when I heard my boyfriend yell my name. I opened my eyes and saw I was alone in the bright light. A second later, my boyfriend slammed into the room. "What's going on?" he asked. I couldn't speak, so I just huddled in his arms and sobbed. I thought someone had broken in when I saw the front door was open, but the back and the garage doors were open too. I was going to close all of them and checked the locks when the lights turned on and I heard you scream. It took a while for me to calm down, but then I told him everything that had been happening to me. At least he believed me. I'm almost 20 now, and we live in an apartment. Just a few nights ago, our closet door opened by itself. I feel like it waits till I feel like I'm safe again. Maybe it feeds on my fear. I couldn't help but be terrified. My boyfriend suggested we call in investigators. I'm willing to try anything, but I don't know if it will help. Whatever is living in my closet, it follows me. That one's scary. I feel like she probably had an attachment her whole life and it just didn't always make an appearance. Maybe it wasn't strong enough. Probably did live off of her fear or thrive off of her fear, but definitely some type of an attachment. Okay, my second one tonight is pretty short. It's not necessarily paranormal, but it did kind of freak me out a little bit, so I'm going to read it to you guys. I gave my husband his final cup of tea tonight. I cracked my son's bedroom door open and peeked my head inside. "So how is he?" I asked. My husband, James, was sitting on the bed with our son across his lap and stroked his hair. He stopped and held up his fingers to his lips, telling me to be quiet. "You're going to wake him up," he said. Sorry, I apologized and said I was just coming in to tell you I made you some tea. I eased the door open and showed him the cup. "Thank you," he replied. "Put it on the nightstand," he said, pointing to the one that was right next to him. As quietly as I could, I walked across the room, set the cup down, and just as quietly walked my way back down out into the hallway. "Let me know if you need anything else," I whispered before closing the door. After I left my son's room, I just stood in the hallway until I heard a thump of the teacup hitting the floor. "I think he's out," I whispered. "Give me a second to check." So I poked my head back into my son's room, and sure enough, my husband was out cold. "It's safe for you to go in and get the body now," I said as I returned to the hallway. You did the right thing, the medical examiner replied before gesturing his assistant to go into the room. I feel bad about drugging my husband's tea, but I mean I had to. It was the only way I could think of to get the body of our son away from him and have my husband transported to a hospital where he could get the help he needed. The end. That one's crazy to me. Could you imagine your child dying and going into like such a psychosis that you don't even realize that your child is dead and you're literally just holding on to his body, you know? That's crazy. But thank you guys for watching. If you could please give me a like and a follow, maybe send me some stars. As my followers grow, I'm hoping to get people to send me their true paranormal encounters, paranormal experiences, scary stories. As long as you can send them to me like in story form so I can read them out loud for you. You can either be anonymous or I'll give you a shout out, but that is my goal eventually to have people send me stuff. As for now, though, I will keep doing my own research so I can continue to tell these stories to you guys. But once again, thank you. Give me a like, give me a follow, send me some stars. Please share this video. And good luck sleeping tonight. I will see you guys tomorrow night for the next one.
We've got another paranormal encounter. So this one was sent in by a woman that I'm going to call Sarah, and this encounter happened around a year ago. So Sarah and her best friend at the time had snuck out of Sarah's house, and they were heading back towards the house. It was around 4 o'clock in the morning. So Sarah's house is surrounded by trees, and there's like a downward walkway to get to her house. So Sarah and her friend are walking towards Sarah's house. They're walking through the trees, and the friend just stops dead. And she's trying to get Sarah to stop dead in her tracks too. So Sarah looks at her friend all confused, like, what's wrong? But we need to get back in this house before we get caught. So Sarah and her friend are stood facing each other. Sarah's looking down the pathway to where our dad used to own a shop, and the friend is looking straight in front of her towards Sarah's house. So Sarah's facing her best friend, and she's looking down towards where this shop used to be, and she thinks she sees a shadow that looks like her dad, but she knows that it definitely wouldn't be her dad at 4 o'clock in the morning. So as Sarah's looking at this shadow, she's in a total trance. She's frozen solid, she can't move, and then slowly the shadow just kind of disappears. So at this point, they're both just stood facing each other, absolutely terrified, and then they hear footsteps coming through the trees. And then Sarah just grabs her friend's hand and runs. And I mean, she ran for her life. Like, at this point, they weren't bothered about being caught no more. They just needed to get to safety. They finally make it back in the house and they start talking about what just happened. Make sure you come back for part 2.